We're very excited to be joined today by Mr. Manoel Sobral, the Director of the UN Forum on Forests. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with DESA News today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I am delighted to be here and be able to share.
You have devoted your life to forests. Can you share with the readers of DESA News how it all began? What sparked your interest?
My first experience with forests were similar to many of people that work for the UN today. Because actually I started working with forests as a trainee in a large forest development project in Brazil, implemented by UNDP and FAO. So that was in the mid-70s. Later on, my interest expanded really to the holistic view of forests. Then I even moved to the Amazon region and stayed 6 years working there in the heart of the forests.
As the new director of the UN Forum on Forests Secretariat, what is your vision for forests around the world? What are some of the key challenges? And also, what are some of the key opportunities that you see?
This is a very interesting question because it allows me to really say how I and how we all should see forests. What are forests really? Forests are connected to water, energy, food security, climate. I mean, are there any more things that are so important as these forests that I just mentioned? Forests are responsible for, forested catchments are responsible for 75% of the fresh water that delivered to the world. Forests are responsible for 9% of the energy the clean energy, renewable energy that the world has. Food, I mean, can you even imagine that food can be produced without forests? How about water? You need forest for water, you need water for agriculture. So it's extremely important, not to mention that, about 20% of the people's population depends to a certain extent on forest for their livelihood. When you talk about biodiversity, for instance, it is something that if we lose, it's irreversible. 80% of the terrestrial biodiversity is in forests. So forests are everything. Now, what is the challenge? What are the opportunities? As much as we consider forests valuable, there are many of the services that forest provides that are public services and public goods. And it's so difficult to make people pay for these public goods. As a result, we have been losing forests, particularly natural forests, while we are expanding plantations. Take China, for instance. China has 70 million hectares of plantation. We are still losing a lot of natural forests. The first challenge is, how do we protect these forests? How do we avoid illegal deforestation and illegal degradation? Regarding the opportunities, we have now the year where agreement will be reached on the overall post-2015 development agenda. We have forests in 2 of the 17 SDGs that were pre-agreed, that will go to the work of the General Assembly later this year. The main opportunity for us in the UNFF is that it's this year, 2015, that we are reviewing the international arrangement on forests. It's these years that the members of the United Nations will decide on how to progress faster towards sustainable forest management.
2015 has been designated as a year of global action. It is the year when the UN will set the Sustainable Development Agenda until 2030. How will the UN Forum on Forests respond to this call for action?
Well, in a way, the UNFF is already responding to the call. The UNFF has contributed actively to the work that led to the adoption, or pre-adoption at least, of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, so 2 of which deal with forests. The UNFF is also at a crossroads. The year 2015 is the year it is finally going to review the international arrangement on forests, and will decide on its own agenda post-2015. We have been in preparations for almost 2 years, and there is, recognition that much more has to be done.
Last week, forest experts met here in New York to discuss the post-2015 international arrangement of forests, paving the way for the 11th session of the UN Forum on Forest taking place in May. Can you share some of the highlights from these discussions?
We have discussed the overall international arrangement on forests. We have reviewed the effectiveness of this arrangement so far, with a focus on the forest instrument, which is really a forest agreement with a different name. It's the only agreement on forests that covers all forests of the world and has basically universal coverage. So there was an emerging consensus that this forest instrument should be updated. We have also discussed the need to develop a strategic action plan. We have discussed the need to strengthen the Secretariat of the UNFF in DESA. But above all, what there has been is a recognition that we have not been very effective, the arrangement and the UNFF, in its major task, which is promote sustainable forest management in the countries. That promotion depends also on mobilizing financing. So we have been discussing the establishment of strategic trust fund. The focus, I would say, the focus will be in implementation. Its success will be really measured against implementation targets. If we don't move more effectively, helping the countries to implement sustainable forest management, we will remain successful only in the dialogue aspect, which is not sufficient if we want to improve the situation of the world's forests.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sobral, for taking the time to speak with DESA News today.
Thank you.